2022, the prospect of investment and industry and service in year 2022. This is a virtual conference on Indonesia economic outlook. And this event is a 4-day event, and every day we will consist of 3 sessions covering wide range of topics. And this event is organized by BeritaSatu Media Holding. And today, I'm Eliza Hassan. I will be your MC, and allow me to greet keynote speakers and our resource people. First of all, good morning to Bapak Bahlil Lahadalia, Minister of Investment and the Head of Investment Coordinating Board, and also Bapak Sakti Wahyu Trenggono, Minister of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. And we also have Bapak Yuda. How are you, sir? You will be our moderator. Hope you are well. Yes, we are so excited to see the Indonesia economic outlook. Yes, and yesterday, first day, all the panelists conveyed their optimism regarding the outlook for next year. Wonderful. And then we have several speakers. We have Bapak Arsyad Rashid, the head of Indonesia Chamber of Commerce, and we have Bapak Ridwan, Bapak Edwin Ridwan, the head of Investment Development, BPJS. And then we have Bapak Raden Pardede, Commissioner of BCA, and Bapak Ricky Avianto, Global Marketing Director of PT Mayora Group, and Bapak Wasudewan, Deputy CEO 99 Group. Good to see you, gentlemen. And now, to begin our event, let us sing the national anthem. Everyone, please rise. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speakers and resource people, and ladies and gentlemen of the audience. Now, I would like to humbly invite Bapak Bahlil Lahadia, Minister of Investment and the Head of Investment Coordinating Board, to convey the keynote speech. we receive information that Bapak Bahlil Lahadalia, the Minister of Investment, is still on the way. And I would like to ask my colleague, the moderator, how do you see the Indonesia economic outlook? Well, investment is one of the key aspects. And I know that through investment, then a lot of aspects will follow, such as the manpower, because it will absorb a lot of labor. So that's why the investment is important, and especially in the midst of pandemic. And next year, we're hoping that there will be a lot more investment coming into Indonesia so that we could immediately recover from the pandemic. Yes, and President Jokowi keep reminding us regarding investment. Yes, because in my opinion, there is no other way to move the economy, because we definitely need investment. So what Pak Bahlil and his ministry will do next year, this will be important, and hopefully he would inform us of his initiatives, his plans for next year, so that we have a better glimpse and what sort of investment sectors that will become our champions, let's say, for next year. Yes, and we receive a lot of investment commitment from various parties, donors, and countries. And our resource people are from different sectors. Now, this would be interesting because they will also contribute to Indonesian economy. You're right. And from the list of speakers, we see representative from Bank Central Asia. Now, you also want to know what sort of investment prospects that will become the driving factor for next year. And same, we want to hear also from BPJS labor, or the universal health coverage for manpower. And also from other resource people, like from 99 Group and from Mayora Group of companies. We want to know more what is going on in the real sector. And of course, one of the person that we've been waiting for is Bapak Sakti, the Minister of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, because maritime is one of our greatest sectors. So we will look forward to his speech, what would be his ministry's initiatives and plans for next year. So this is extremely important. And we also have Pak Arsyad Rashid, the chairman of Indonesia Chamber of Commerce. He was elected last June. So he's representing all business sectors in Indonesia. So we're eager to know about his views. What would be the investment opportunities that we need to optimize in Indonesia? So overall, that is what we're going to talk about, involving all experts in their field. Yes, thank you. And now we are still waiting for Pak Bahlil Lahadalia, Minister of Investment, and we're hoping to hear valuable insights, plans, and also programs that he planned to initiate next year from the Ministry of Investment. And same with Bapak Sakti Wahyu Trenggono, Minister of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. Yes, and the government also mentioned about the digital sector, because we see an enormous potential in digital sector. And from the survey from Google Temasek some time ago, they inform us that the value of the digital work here is exceeding 150 billion. This is exciting. And then another thing that we often hear is green economy. Now, as you know, Indonesia will be one of the center countries that will build the battery industry. Now, this is exciting. Yes. So this is one of the sectors that we keen to know more about regarding the battery energy industry and also other industry. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're still waiting for Pak Bahlil Lahadia. So stay with us in our virtual webinar, Indonesia Economic Outlook.
Hanya dengan Rp16.800 per bulan. Mudahnya cari hunian impian untuk memulai perjalanan baru. Ada jutaan pilihan sesuai kebutuhanmu. Dari nyari sampai nempatin rumah baru, karena kami ada buat kamu. Temukan hunian impian di rumah123.com.
You are with us in virtual conference, Indonesia Economic Outlook. Here, we will talk about various things such as the macroeconomic and also service sector. And here we have with us Bapak Bahlil Lahadalia, the Minister of Investment and the Chairman of Investment Coordinating Board. Thank you. God's blessings be upon us all. Namo Buddhaya. Shalom. The Honorable BeritaSatu Media Holding, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the opportunity for us to share our views in this important forum. Allow me to convey several points concerning our economic situation this year and the outlook for next year. The COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, started last year, and it affects all layers of society, and no one predicted this. And year 2020 was a difficult year for everyone, for every country, including Indonesia, and there was a minus growth development. And then year 2021, we started using certain strategies. And in the first quarter, we were still experiencing a minus 0.75. And then second quarter, we have a positive because at that time, our baseline was a bit lower compared to the first quarter. But then the third quarter, we were surprised because in the third quarter, we worked for 1 whole month because from overall 3 months, for over 1 month, we entered the PPKM or the social restriction, the highest level, level 4. But even though during that times, there was a development growth more than 3%, 3.5% to be exact. And then the largest contribution, export, import, and investment. Allow me to convey a little more regarding this. Last year, when the COVID-19 pandemic started, all countries, including Indonesia, were suffering. And we had no reference. We couldn't copy a single country where they face such serious crisis such as COVID-19, and we had to think out of the box. And then during the third quarter, the highest infection rate experienced by Indonesia, there was level 4 PPKM. We had a crisis, you could say. And we, together with the Ministry of Trade, we established a team to expedite export and investment and end-to-end export and investment. And at that time, we identify many companies that could increase their export and what are newcomers and how we could assist them so they could export. And thank goodness, praise to Almighty God that we managed to do just that. And Indonesia first survived the first phase. Even though during that time, again, that was the highest infection rate that we experienced in Indonesia. And then until the third quarter, the growth of our investment, if we see the target is 900 trillion minus the mining and forestry. And in year 2020, the realization is 659 trillion. And what's interesting, the economic growth is no longer dominated by activities concentrated in Java Island. So the 73% of investment that we brought to the table, or 659 trillion, was not dominated by Java. And there is a balance between foreign direct investment and the national investment. Last year, the foreign direct investment was reduced by 30%. And I will explain why that occurred. And then our national investment becomes the highest contributor, meaning we have huge resources for our national trade, as long as we could collaborate and communicate well to work each other to execute our plans, our programs, so they could excel. And we have many manpower or labor force. And in my notes, Since the third quarter of last year, we have a larger investment that goes outside of Java Island. Now, this shows that there are a lot of infrastructure work took place outside Java, and we could reap the benefit now, because it is impossible if an investment coming in, whether foreign direct investment or national investment, could go into a particular region if they do not comply with several requirements, such as infrastructure or certain resources. And we felt that infrastructure really provide a lot of good. Now, which countries that invest in Indonesia? Now, Singapore, still number one till this day, 7.3 billion US dollars. And then Hong Kong, 3.1, China, 2.3, Japan, 1.8, Netherlands, 1.5, South Korea, 1.3, and the US, 0.8. Now, in the last 10 years, European countries never entered the top 5 in the number of investment in Indonesia, and even South Korea has shifted its place. So it shows that the global trust towards Indonesia is improving. And we must admit that last year, Indonesia was elected as the number one country that has the most complicated bureaucracy. And here, look at number one country who invested in Indonesia, Singapore. Now, there's a possibility Singapore invested a lot in Indonesia, but I believe personally that a lot of investment that coming in from Indonesia are actually the funds originated from Indonesian businessmen. And there, Singapore becomes like the gateway. Now, this shows that Indonesia has the highest competitive level. So, ladies and gentlemen, we also have several targets as stipulated in our RPJMN. For next year, in our RPJMN, or the midterm development plan, in line with the instruction from the president, we have to achieve 1,200 trillion in investment. And we must have a development growth above 5%. Now, it's not an easy task. And it has to be done. And it's a massive work. I agree. But I personally believe, based on last year's experience and with next year's target, if we combine our work and include even more sectors from upstream to downstream, we could achieve this. Now, what would be the KPI or strategies from the Minister of Investment to generate more investment coming into Indonesia? In the past, the BKPM, or the coordinating board, investment coordinating board, they promote and they market the Indonesia. But now we have shifted from that approach. We have job creation law and other policies. And here we understand that the business sector needs transparency, efficiency, and accelerate or speed. And in Indonesia, this 4 element is difficult. When I was a businessman, if I want to process my business, the license, then only God knows when the permit will be released. And then if we go on Hajj to Mecca, we know what are the processes that we must do. But regarding licensing in Indonesia, we cannot tell because the bureaucratic process, it is so severe. So we cannot really tell. And hopefully with certain significant changes, we could turn things around. So we want people, when they apply for the permit, let's say domestic and foreign investors, we assist them. And the state will also help with the financial closing if it is necessary. And then we help them during execution phase, during the production stage. If they want to build factory and they receive resistance, we help them up to the point they could engage in production process. So end to end. So with this, the government could experience multiplier effect. Because if we assist during production stage alone, then the government will not receive a maximum benefit. So we will help them end to end. And as you know, last year, there many investment couldn't come. And when I was the head of this investment coordinating board, there were over 700 trillion withheld because there was a lot of factors. One of them is ego sectoral from different region. Now, when we talk about sectoral ego, it is difficult. But with our hard work and collaboration, we managed to resolve this problem. And then our president encouraged us to have a big vision to transform our economy. And here, the president instructed us how we could build upstream to downstream and what it's important to add added value. And then you also hear about green economy. Now, in the past, we have export during the VOC. It's very, very small. We keep sending raw material and we rely heavily on timber, on logging industry. And at that time, it was the golden age. And then we also have copper golden age, Freeport, Newman. But where did that leave us? No, it didn't leave us with anything. And we also had a golden age regarding fisheries. And here, I also understand that we have Bapak Sakti in this forum. Now, and sometimes we lack of technology compared to Thailand and Vietnam in maritime industry. We have a lot of raw material. We have enormous fish, but we don't have factories to process them. Same with coal. So here we must not lose any more momentum. So the president instructed us and the coordinating ministries to work end to end. So we start with tin. So when I first entered the office of the investment coordinating board, I released several policies, even though that resulted in many demonstrations in front of my office. But we have a long-term vision because by year 2030, the US, Europe, and other countries, 70 to 80% of their vehicles, their industry will use tin and they will rely on batteries. So here they will rely on cobalt and lithium. We have cobalt and lithium. What we don't have is lithium. We have to import it from Australia. That is why we don't want to export a lot of them. So what we did, we have investment with LG, more than 1,000 trillion, because we know that we have a lot of reserve for lead. And then after the Reformation, our investment with LG was one of the biggest. Now we want to support the industry. We want to become one of the major players in the battery industry, and one of the component is lead. Now we want to build smelter, the battery cell, and other parts, so end to end. And this is not a dream. We started, made it happen. And last May, we already have electric car for the first phase. And then we will build the other precursors last year. And I know that there are many LG representatives also in this forum. Now, this is one of our commitment to provide a lot of assistance and investment to make green energy happen. And we were also disliked by certain parties, so they took us to court, but we still move on with our efforts. So this is what we are doing. And we are grateful that Pak Jokowi has a clear vision. And then regarding our gas, we import over 5 million tons or 6 tons per year. And the price of LPG is 5,300 per kilogram. And then the price per ton for LPG is $450 US. At the market price is 17,000. And we subsidize LPG per 1 ton is about 12 trillion rupiah. So if we times 0.5, our money will be depleted for LPG subsidy only. So that's why we support coal mining, but low calorie coal, because they will produce DMA, and DMA will replace LPG. Now, in our calculation, we will experience a huge efficiency because DMA price is not as expensive as LPG. So the highest is 100 or 650. So we could save the state budget by 20 trillion if we could do this. Now, these are the efforts that we take. And if we continue doing this, then we could achieve green energy and green economy. Now, if we keep maintaining our production using coal, it will not last long. Green energy is okay, but it's not up to us to do it alone. Other countries must follow suit. So we are in the phase of blending so that Indonesia has a competitive edge. And here we already have an industry sector concentrated in Batam region. And then we also built another green energy sector in Kalimantan, in Kayan region. And then in Papua, we have 23,000 megawatt facility in Papua. So we have master plan in place, and we will implement that further. And I believe it would bring a huge potential to Indonesia. And then if you ask me about the development growth, well, if we see In the third quarter, judging from realization figures, then we will experience a higher development growth. So I'm definitely optimistic. We could develop 5 to 5.5% in the fourth quarter, but with one condition: if we could maintain low infection rate from COVID-19. Now, next year, our investment, hopefully we could bring in 1,200 trillion because we have communicated with other countries and other companies. So next year, there will be a momentum in investment rate compared to this year. But again, with one condition: we must be able to maintain low COVID-19 infection. And here we need to work together, including the media. We have to concentrate our energy to build constructive dialogue, not negative one. So all of us need to work hard together. We need to intensify our collaboration on and all layers of society to support the national development so that we have more jobs, more national income for the prosperous economy. That is all from my side. And Pak Trenggono, my senior from the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Fishery, I'm sure he will give more information on this. So that is all from my side. Thank you so much.
So it is quite heartening to hear that 2022 will have a better, brighter prospect than 2021. And let's have a group photo first with the other panelists, or maybe Pak Adit have some questions to ask the minister. Okay, well, we have the minister with us. We are prepared to work with the government to promote optimism and how we frame the outlook for Indonesian economy in 2022. All of the speakers in our previous panel yesterday spoke about an accelerated recovery in 2022. On behalf of the media, we are prepared to work with the government to build our collective optimism. So this is a good opportunity for us to speak with you. So Minister Bahlil, I would like to ask a number of questions based on your presentation. You said that the government gave a higher target for realization for next year. So what do you think are the impact of the job creation law in this year, which impacts investment? You have been appointed as one of the authority to accelerate the implementation of this law, so which is to be finalized this year. So what the implementation of this law has been, what impact has this law had on this on investment? So in 2022, our target is 1,200 trillion. The 900 trillion is the one that we put in our strategic plans, but the president instructed us to get 1,200 trillion in investment, and we are prepared to comply with that instruction. When we talk about the positive impact of the job creation law, especially in terms of permit, we know that the law, one of the substance of the law is permit or investment permit. In Article 74, it is stipulated that the authority to issue permits in government institution should be understood as the president's authority that is delegated to the various institutions, and this authority will be regulated through normal standard and procedure, and this is manifested in rule number 5, and this delineated the stages or the sequences for permits. So by 2022, everything should be through online online submission through the investment ministry. All the processes should be transparent. Every permit shall be signed for approval by the technical ministry relevant for the particular investment. If the file is complete and some ministry or institution did not give technical approval, we from the Ministry of Investment can use a procedure called fixed positive. Some ministry and institutions, including the Ministry of Finance, might provide fiscal incentives like tax holidays. This is now been assigned to the Ministry of Investment to allocate to certain investors. This one single submission permit gateway is still not satisfactory because it has only been implemented on August the 9th. Our target is that in 2022, in early 2022, this implementation has run according to plan. With SME, every day we issued about 5,000 to 6,000 SME permits. So now we need to work with the bigger corporations or bigger businesses. The impact that we have seen is that the number of investment is increasing due to the more facilitated permit application system. So we need to better synchronize the system. The job creation law is a gateway toward better or improved investment realization in 2022, which is 1,200 trillion. And to give certainty, transparency, speed of investment. So thank you, Pak Bahlil. I hope that the one single submission system can be accelerated in next year so that we can realize the target for our investment next year. And considering the scheduling of Minister Bahlil, I would like to invite the Minister Bahlil and the other panelists for this session to take a group photo. We will start the group photo now. 1, 2, and 3. All right, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and thank you, Minister Bahlil Ladalia, Minister of Investment and Chair of Investment Coordinating Board, for the insightful keynote speech to open the second day of Prospect of Indonesian Economic Outlook in 2022, a virtual conference. And next, we are going to listen to the keynote speech from Bapak Sakti Wahyu Trenggono, Minister of Marine and Fisheries. And the floor is yours, sir. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Good morning. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. I am now in Bitung. I've just opened a troop deployment to prepare for the to prepare for a military event. In 2021, we investigated the current condition in the marine and fisheries affairs. So in marine and fisheries, we noticed that there is a huge international market, $160 billion worth of various fish, in which Indonesia have almost all of those fish except for the salmon, which is controlled by Norway. So for the past 11 months, we have reviewed the state of our marine resources and the model of our fisheries to boost the fisheries sector to grow as one of the source of foreign exchange reserves. So in 2020, this sector contributes 224 trillion with an export of $2.6 billion. And this is quite small compared to the potentials, our marine potentials. And this is only from the fisheries sector, because we also have marine space and then also tourism, which I think is still possible to develop. In 2022, the Marine and Fisheries Ministry will be part of the development of a blue economy, which is to put in place a quota on fish catchment. So controlled fish catchment is now implemented all over the world. And this practice is still unregulated in Indonesia and also unreported. So we have illegal fisheries from other countries, but our own local fisheries also engage in unregulated and unreported fishing practices. We haven't managed our fisheries in a very professional way, and this will have deleterious consequences in the future. The fisheries sector have a very significant value. And so starting 2022, the controlled fish catchment will be put in fact. We have conducted various benchmark in various countries in the world, and to discover that we are the only maritime countries that has not put that kind of practice in place. So we would divide the Indonesian fisheries areas into certain zones. It has a huge potential, about 12 million ton, and that's only for the fish commodity. So these are some of the zones. The blue zones are controlled catchment zones. The green ones are controlled fishery zones, but this is for the traditional fishermen. So each of these zones has tremendous potentials. So the first zone is the 711, and then the third zone is 712, 713, and the 714, 718 is also hugely potential, and 57171 and 573, all of these are hugely potential. And out of these zones, we will offer them to investors. We continue to work with the Minister of Investment, and inform him that we are going to put this program in place. Controlled catchment will be divided into three level of categories: commercial, local fishermen quota, and non-commercial or hobbyist quota. So the commercial quota is for industrial fishing, and this will be offered to domestic and foreign investors. A lot of investors had expressed interest in investing in commercial fishing in Indonesia, and we need to work with the Ministry of Investment to talk about the technical aspect of it, how to auction this quota and the permit side of it, and how this can be accommodated in the one single submission permit gateway that has been set up by the Ministry of Investment. For the local fisherman quota, we have to identify the number of traditional fishermen, and we need to put them into groups based. We identify their villages, and then we repair and refurbish their villages, and we encourage them into fishermen cooperatives. We will work with the Ministry of Cooperatives to develop that part of the program and support them for fuel and gas and other necessities that they might need when they go out to sea to fish. So there will be thousands of fishing villages that we will be developing in the next 3 years. And then the third one is the non-commercial quota. This is for fishing hobbyists or fishing tourism and research. So these three quota will be put in effect in early 2022. For the commercial quota, in every catchment zone, especially in the 4 industrial zone, especially the first zone, there is 417,000 tons of quota that can be taken advantage of, 473,000, and its value is around 13.1 trillion per year. But it can easily go twice or threefold that value. The second zone is valued at 15.8 trillion per year. The third zone has a value of 46 trillion or 2,266 ton. And the last one is worth 35 ton and stretch from Aceh to Kupang. And the total quota in every zone, so for example, zone 1, zone 2, and 4, will be divided into these 3 categories: for industry, for traditional fishermen, and for hobbyists. The multiplier effect that might come up, an illustration of the multiplier effect that might come up from this system is a huge monetary circulation, around 128 trillion, 281 trillion every year. So with quota-based controlled fish catchment will result in this amount of circulation, and it will develop businesses in the outlying region. Fish catchment industry, for example, in zone 3 will process all the fish caught in that area, and then it will export it directly from that facilities, and they can also sell it to the domestic market, for example, in Java. So we will implement this so that the workforce, especially in these areas, will can be tapped into it. So this development can open more work opportunities and thus drive more economic growth. So this scheme will require 745,000 boat crew. They will need also loading workers and about 1,000 fish processing workers. So basically a lot of work opportunities. So we will start this in 2022. We hope that in 2022 and 2023, this plan can go according to script. And we plan to start getting investors. We have a lot of investors that express interest, for example, from China, from Japan, from Taiwan, and also some European investors who are interested in the southern fishing zone, which is rich in tuna and other deep sea fishes of high value. So this is what we are planning to do in the next 3 years from the Ministry of Marine and Fisheries. And we hope that if this is implemented properly, we might increase our foreign exchange reserves from the fisheries about 2 to 3 times more than we have earned in 2020. We might contribute up to $15 billion in foreign exchange reserves from the fisheries. So apart from this, we also engage in developing cultivation of shrimp, lobster, and crab. This also has tremendous values. We have plotted the areas where we are going to develop these particular industries. I see that we have the Pak Arshad Rashid here, the chair of Indonesia Chamber of Commerce. So I really would welcome you and your team to I welcome you to come to our office so that you can listen to our proposition. So that's it from me. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So thank you, Pak Sakti Wahyu Trenggono, Minister of Marine and Fisheries, for his keynote speech. We have learned about the tremendous development that is planned through the use of controlled catchment, and it might result in a multiplier effect, as Pak Sakti has already said, and hopefully this will be attractive to the investors, as Pak Bahlil Ladalia, the Minister of Investment, had said earlier that there would be more opportunities for investment in Indonesia. So thank you, Pak Sakti, for sharing your agency's plans. So for next, we will listen to the panel discussion on prospects of investment in 2022. But first, I would like to remind you that if you have any questions for the panelists, you can just write down your question in the Q&A section on your Zoom panel. And we would like also to thank Minister Bahlil Ladalia, Minister of Investment and Chair of Investment Coordinating Board, as well as Pak Sakti Wahyu Trenggono, Minister of Marine and Fisheries, for giving the keynote speech that opens this morning's session. So let's continue with our panel discussion, which will be moderated by Aditya Laksmana Yuda. The floor is yours, Pak Adit. Thank you, Elisa. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are now going to begin with our discussion, the second day of our virtual conference on Indonesian Economic Outlook 2022, and we will be focusing today on the prospects of investment in 2022. Apart from the two ministers who had given their keynote speech for the session, we have four panelists with us. And I would like to welcome the Chair of Indonesian Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Arshad Rashid. Good morning, Arshad. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you're doing well. And next, I also would like to welcome Mr. Edwin Ridwan, Director of Investment Development from BPJS Ketenagakerjaan, or BPJS, the Social Security Network. And next, I would like to welcome Bapak Ricky Afrianto, Global Marketing Director of Mayora Group TBK. Thank you so much for joining us. And I would like also to welcome Deputy CEO 99 Rumah 123 Bapak Wasudewan. We are still awaiting one of the panelists who will be joining us today, Mr. Raden Pardede, Commissioner of PT Bank Sentral Asia Tbk. But let's begin with our discussion on the prospect of investment in 2022. First of all, I would like to invite Mr. Arshad Rashid, the Chair of Indonesian Chamber of Commerce, to share his insights into the prospects of investment, especially following the implementation of the job creation law and the one single submission permit gateway, which is expected to be a catalyst in boosting the industrial development in the country. So thank you, Pa Aditya. I hope you can see my presentation. In terms of economic growth, but first I would like to welcome the other panelists, Mr. Edwin, Mr. Ricky, Pak Wasudewan, and the other panelists, and also the participants who are attending this webinar. When we're talking about economy, first of all, we need to be optimistic. We noticed that the global economic growth in 2022 is expected to grow by around 4%. And in the third quarter, there is a dip in growth in the third quarter, but there is an increasing trend for the fourth quarter. We need to remember that in 2 or 3 months ago, there was a lockdown. And when we're talking about Indonesia, we are very optimistic that the economy will grow by 5.5% next year. But the global economic growth is still a question for us because of the increasing number of COVID cases in Europe. So this is something that we need to be concerned about. But I think the global economy in general is still quite optimistic. In Indonesia in particular, we have seen much lower cases of COVID cases in Indonesia, and over 60% of the Indonesian population had been vaccinated at least once. So when we're talking about vaccination, we are already over 50% of our population have been vaccinated. So this is quite a heartening development. So these are some of signs of economic recovery. When we talk about the Indonesian investment climate, we need to look into Indonesia's investment rating. The trend shows that during the pandemic, despite the pandemic, we showed quarter by quarter improvement, and we need to look. We can say that Indonesia's investment rating continues to be good, with Moody's rated as stable, and Fitch as well. So this is a cause for optimism for us, and a sign that Indonesia's economy will continue to be stable and good. In 2022, when we talk about business prospects, in 2022, culinary businesses is quite a promising sector in 2022. And it will continue to grow in 2022, especially when we talk about technology. Acceleration of this industry is quite rapid, because the new normal, our new reality, requires a lot of this telecommunication, like we are having this webinar over Zoom. And this is a prospect not only for 2022, but looking forward, this is something that we will continue to see in the following years. This is a vertical industry that this digitalization will open more opportunities apart from the disruption. And then another business that we need to look into is the fashion industry. We used to hear that textile is a sunset industry, but every era have its losing and winning industries. We kept hearing that textile is a losing industries, but now it's a winning industries with very good prospect in 2022. And automotive industry, especially with the exemption of VAT. And as we can see, the automotive expo a while ago had huge number of visitors. This indicates that this business have a very promising prospect in 2022. When we're talking about prospects in 2022, manufacturing and agriculture have about 35% contribution to the GDP. So these two industries in 2021 continues to grow even despite the pandemic. So the Ministry of Fisheries said that the fisheries had continued to contribute to the GDP, and with the program in place, their planned programs in place, this will continue to develop. We have continued to maintain and preserve the fisheries potentials in Indonesia. And then also, when we talk about digitalization, with the pandemic had accelerated Indonesian e-commerce, because our lifestyle had changed, and this is projected to continue to grow not only in 2022, but also in 2023, 2024, and even going forward. And this is a trend that is going to happen worldwide, this digitalization. And this will impact commercial services, government services, and they will continue to align with this trend. And it will also impact the health, education, and financial sector. And with the OSS system, the one single submission system, as Pak Bahlil said, this isn't yet a satisfactory system, but it has created a sense of optimism, and it is hoped that in future, once the implementation is running 100%, it will usher in reform and transformation and the ease of doing business in Indonesia by facilitating people to become entrepreneur, to become business people. And this is one of the prospects in the future. So what are the opportunities that businesses can see in 2022? Domestic demand will push in economic growth in Indonesia. Globally, supply and demand continues to grow with the growing optimism. With our population of 270 million, we will have a very high domestic demand for products. And in terms of export also offers a huge potentials for us. In 2021, our furniture industry grows very rapidly because I would say that we are at war now. In Chamber of Commerce, we have two wars. I said we have two wars. First, the war against the pandemic and the economic war. The economic war is happening now. It's the third world war because there are trade wars between countries, and in this case, Indonesia has to be able to position itself as one of the neutral countries to see the opportunities that might open in the trade war between China and the US. How our apparels, our textiles, they are in high demand. So something that used to be a sunset industry is now growing. So we need to look into export opportunities and to boost this export because these opportunities should be won, we should be able to address to these opportunities, to meet these opportunities. And from the government stimulus point of view, we need to look into the incentives and social aid. This will continue, and this will serve as a booster as well for businesses in 2022. And then infrastructure development. The government is working on developing infrastructure, and this will also boost economy, both for the industry itself, for the infrastructure industry, but also the areas where this infrastructure is developed, because it will make for more efficient businesses and more business opportunities. And in terms of structural reform, we have the job creation law and the law on taxation, and something that we need to refer to for future development. And there is also the G20 presidency in 2022, something that we need to work toward drawing more investors, apart from tourists, but also investors, because we are the first developing countries to host or to hold the presidency of the G20. So these events can, the events leading up to the G20 meeting in October 2022, we can use this to introduce Indonesia to the world. People still think Indonesia is still the old Indonesia, so it is our opportunity to show through these international events, we can show the new Indonesia. And in 2023, we also have ASEAN events. So we have to use these events to develop tourism in Indonesia and to draw in investors and build trust in Indonesia. But despite all these prospects and opportunities, we still face a number of challenges, and we need to remain cautious about the COVID situation, even with the vaccination and protocols. If we look at Singapore with its very strict protocols, they still see a rise in positive cases. And every wave, every new wave caused a huge impact. Like for example, in the second quarter, we enjoy a 7% growth, and this drops to 3% growth by the third quarter because of the lockdown. Another challenge is our low level of digitalization. We only have about 20% industries that implemented the digitalization in their industry. In other countries, this number has reached 50%. So we need to get manufacturing of Indonesia to reach the 50% digitalization level. Another challenge in terms of digitalization is the human resources, because human resources is the key in developing human resources. The education system had talked about linking and matching universities with the industry. But we also need a national vocation board to answer, to give a short-term and long-term answer to the need for better ICT specialists, ICT technicians that are needed for the development of digitalization in Indonesia. And also to make sure that the link and match system not only happens at university level, but also at the high school level. So high school level vocational school should be able to answer the demand of the industry. We in the Chamber of Commerce see this as a challenge. We need human resources, but we also need to reskill and upskill our existing workers and our workers in the manufacturing sectors, because with the technology, we might need to lay off more people. So this is without upskilling and reskilling, we might have to lose a lot of manpower. You have one more minute, Mr. Arshad. Okay, so my last slide talks about the incentive that the business sector requires. First of all, is the tax incentive, carry forward and carry back in the tax, and also for SMEs and manufacturing, we need some lowering of operational costs in terms of electricity or power bill and energy bill, and loosening of loan payment, especially for SME. This relates to the interest rates. And with the current condition, access to capital for informal sector is very crucial. So it is important for us to find ways to get small SMEs to access sources of capital. So there are some challenges, but we need to remain optimistic. So thank you, Mr. Arshad, for your exposition. We have a lot of potentials, a lot of sectors with potentials for investment this year. It's almost nothing is missed, nothing is left behind. But you also noted that since the condition is not normal, it's not yet the pre-COVID condition, it is hoped that certain incentives can be prepared by the government, especially for the supply for the businesses. And in maybe one question to elaborate on what you have explained. So in terms of testimonial from the Chamber of Commerce, we know that the job creation law has been implemented in the past year. So in your viewpoint, how optimum, how is this law, how is this job creation law has been facilitating or accelerating the permit processing so that it might help our rating from the World Bank. So especially from the business viewpoint, has this law been helping us to get permit in a faster and more efficient way? When we talk about the job creation law, this has already created some sort of optimism, especially for investors and the business, but we cannot separate this from the technical laws or technical regulations. What we need to talk about and we need to monitor is that not all of the technical regulations are implemented or are implemented according to as intended. So the Chamber of Commerce that accommodates small SMEs see this as a good law, but we also need to look into how this is technically implemented. I think there is room for improvement in some of these technical regulations. And some of the technical regulations did not carry the spirit of the job creation law. So the execution happens not only on central or national level, but also in regional or city or district level. And this is still unsatisfactory. But at least we have the law. We just have to monitor the implementation, the technical regulations, because the implementation is quite massive. It's across 500 cities, 34 provinces in Indonesia, and not all of them are at the same level of understanding as to they're not educated as to the spirit of the law. Pak Bahlil is aware of this issue, that the one single submission system is still unsatisfactory because of course, with any kind of application, there might be version 1, version 2, version 3. So we need to continue to monitor this and to give feedback to the Ministry of Investment. We have an MOU with the Ministry of Investment because they need input from us as to how this system is operating. So this is we are at the process where things are getting stabilized. So thank you, Pak Arshad, for your explanation.
We have with us Pak Raden Pardede, Commissioner of Bank Sentral Asia. Good morning. So we started with Pak Arshad from the Indonesia Chamber of Commerce. And now we would like to invite you with your input. And also, I invite Bapak Edwin Ridwan, the Investment Development Director from BPJS Manpower. Now, you manage the funds concerning the labor and how you build your portfolio. Now, as the Investment Development Director, perhaps you could give us the investment prospect for next year. How you manage the funds from the BPJS manpower. The floor is yours, Pa Edwin. Yes, thank you. God's blessings be upon us all. The Honorable Bapak Aditya Laksmana Yuda, our moderator, and our speakers. We have Pak Arsyad Rashid, Pak Raden Pardede, Pak Riki, Pak Wasudewan. Thank you so much for conveying the invitation to me. I will start with my presentation. Here, BP Jam Sostek, we manage the funds from all workers, and the value is over 500 trillion, and this covering 5 areas regarding accident, work-related accident, pension, and also our latest program, the loss of jobs or profession. And we also have other issues that we are dealing with. And here, we manage the funds from the pension fund. We are liability driven. And here, we need to understand the characteristic of various investors, which is different from others that are asset driven. And here, because we are liability driven investor, so we use different approach. Whereas a bank and other institution, they manage their investment differently. For asset-driven investor, it's like corporation, foundations, and from the purpose of the investment, it's slightly different, because liability-driven investor, we try to match the asset liability, their cash flow, and the target return. It has to be actual real rate of return or the absolute, whereas asset driven, the target return, they use a particular benchmark on a certain index. And then regarding risk tolerance, we in BPJS labor, we could tolerate the high risk and low risk as well. It depends on the characteristic of the liability. And we understand that Indonesia have a huge demographic bonus and many workers at productive years. And here we need to anticipate in coming years that some of the participants of the labor will retire. And the current worker need to bear the risk. And we're hoping that they could give us higher return. And for those participants, we put also our funds in stock market as well. And then here, for the asset driven, regarding liquidity, it is in line with the cash flow of the current company. And then the investment limitation, we allocate the asset and we also compare it with our liability profile. Whereas for asset-driven investor, we see the instruction from the stakeholders and it has to be flexible. From asset allocation, here, there are several forms, and we, as BPJS labor, we are liability-driven investor, and we are dynamic, meaning we follow the movement in the stock market in order to get the maximum return. And here, we have fixed income instrument. And here, the minimum investment that we do for government bonds is 50% from the entire funds that we manage. Whereas if you're a company, the maximum is 30%. And then our investment in the stock market is 12.1%, whereas for bonds, 7.1%. But for bonds, most of them are in the form of stock, and our exposure to the capital market is close to 20% or 19.2%. And then for direct investment or property, it's still very low. It's almost 0.5%. And here, we also put other options for direct investment. And we also conduct active management, where we carefully select the fundamental aspect. We watch the momentum from the market and the timing. And here, in order to get optimum yield, we disperse our investment, as you see, from the capital market and also mutual bonds and others. And then in our investment, we try our best so that we could create more jobs. And then the selected sectors here. We have automotive, telecommunication, banking, and mining, because the way we see their fundamental work, the performance in these four factors are valid. And then we see a good progress. And here we see also there is an increase of composite index. Plus, the currency is relatively stable at 14,100 to 14,300. And it makes us optimistic for next year that the development of the investment will improve significantly. Other factors that we see is the increasing commodity prices. For example, crude oil year on year is increasing. The same with coal, 7.9%. And Indonesia is one of the countries that rely on the commodity prices. And we want also for this sector to contribute so that it could increase the development rate. And then regarding the sectors that have good fundamental, by October 2021, the banking sector is relatively good. And we also observe that in China, there are certain situations that are unfavorable. So we anticipate the situation that, and also because Indonesia is one of the emerging markets, so we will look forward to more incoming investment. And Indonesia is one of the potential options for other countries to invest in. And then for these sectors, such as banking, for 5 banks, they have a good net interest income. We also notice that there is a reduce in provision. And there's also COVID-19 restricting balance. And then if we see the automotive sector, we see a good improvement where the financing credit cost is decreasing. And same with the mining. Mining sector is quite prospective for next year. Apart from the sectors, we also see several investment opportunities in three main themes, which are private deals, tech industry, from ESG principal enterprises. Now, apart from the investments, we believe that they will also support the government priorities. Private deals here, meaning infrastructure project or renewable energy project. In the past, it experienced stagnation due to COVID-19. And because the conditions are improving, we think that it will gradually improve as well. And several of those projects already resume its activities. Pak Edwin, my apology, you only have 2 more minutes. Thank you. Second, we see that there is investment opportunity in tech or digital platform. And I agree with previous speakers that the digital platform in Indonesia is very promising. So this is our tools that we could expand further. And then lastly, the third investment opportunity is in ESG, where here we believe that there's a huge potential here. And we from BPJS Labor, we also apply ESG, and we have 34% in the capital market for ESG compliant stock. And here, apart from the nature and human capital, those sectors are profitable and have good prospect for next year. One more thing, if I may. We see that there are challenges or barriers as well. Next year, we anticipate that there will be limitation in investment tools because we only have limited tools regarding capitalization and liquidation as well. So we need to strengthen the market and also instrument that enables us to invest in other sectors. And then regarding the cut loss, we see that there has to be legal certainty. This is one of the issues that need to be addressed in the future. And then the ultra low interest rates due to COVID-19 pandemic. So we need monetary principles that are accommodating, because I know it is challenging to find investment that could produce optimum yield. I guess that is all from my side. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pa Edwin. I have a couple of questions for Pa Edwin. We know that BPJS is one of the biggest investor in Indonesia, and you manage more than 500 trillion. Now, we want to know what about the trend of this performance so that you could get bigger yield? And then what are the prospects for next year? Do you think there will be an increase? And whether the increase is minimum, or do you anticipate there will be more workers stay at home? Or do you think the members of BPJS labor will decrease or increase? And the projection of the management.
So I think it is possible to reach our goal of 7%. This is the result of the work of my team. Of course, we also have to deal with a lot of challenges from the pandemics and the volatile stock exchange. But as the condition improved, we are more optimistic that our investment target that is mandated to us will be able to be achieved. In terms of premium, we received about 7 trillion. We paid about 35 trillion in. We still receive 75 trillion of additional funding every year, even though we have to pay 35 trillion in claims, and so we still have some margins of profit. Our target is to get a yield of 6.55%, and we need to achieve this. We need to have a more dynamic strategy with certain deposits, certain types of deposits. Do you have any projections for next year's yield? Do you have any projection for next year? Our target is basically the same, 6.5%, but there will be growth in terms of the amount of funding. The financial market, as Pak Arsyad and Pak Bahlil said, is showing great opportunities for foreign direct investment, and also in the real sector is showing promising prospects for 2022. And next we will listen to our next speaker, Mr. Raden Pardede, Commissioner of PT Bank Sentral Asia Tbk. We're talking about the prospect of investment. So for investment credit in Indonesia, what sectors are your priority? Sectors that banks are more likely to give loan to. So what are the economic prospects from the viewpoint of from the banking sector? Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good morning to all the panelists and the participants of the webinar on the Indonesian Economic Outlook 2022. I would like to share my presentation. Okay. We've heard from the minister, from the chair of the Chamber of Commerce, and I just would like to reiterate that banks follow the trade. If the trade flourish, it only happens because people are buying. People are making purchases, and people are buying if they trust something and there is mobility, and mobility depends on the control of the pandemic. So the key is controlling the pandemic and trust. controlling pandemic will result in better mobility and more activity. So judging by the numbers, we can see that credits is increasing, but on loan at risk had increased, and data from September, even though there are loan at risk and during the pandemic, we see that this number had dropped from 24% to 22%. This means that companies are starting to be able to pay their loan. Bank capital is in a good condition, over 20%, maybe over 3% in certain banks. And judging from this data, it seems that banks are prepared to give credit, to give loan, but it depends on trust and buying power and controlling and better mobility. We've talked about consumer confidence, purchasing manager index, which is showing positive signs. And there are external factors, which include our exports, our trade balance, our current balance of payment. So it's all positive. So if we can continue to maintain this and inspire trust and confidence, so from current account, we can maintain inflation. So we have a very promising prospect next year. In the next slide, the next slide shows our credit growth. In January from August, there are some aspects that we need to look into. There is an acceleration in trade and logistics, especially transportation. Trade continues to rise in January to August. This shows correlation between mobility and economy. Fisheries is always showing positive growth, especially in our tuna and shrimp export, and also with agriculture that is growing by 5.7%. And fisheries with the credit for business credits. Manufacture maybe lag behind these other sectors, but we hope that this will continue to grow, will continue to recover, and they will then apply for investment credit. And this might they might apply for investment credit once their utilization reach the 60-70% level. And this is the situation until August. And everything is following an upward trend. Some are still in the negatives, but it's gradually growing. Logistic industries especially is driven by the online trade. Non-online transportation is lagging behind, but online transportation that supports digital or e-commerce is growing very rapidly. These are the top of mind growth industry, the growth industry that will grow in 2022 to 2023. Credit growth relies on economic growth. So since next year's economy is expected to grow by 5.5%, then credit growth is expected to be around that time, around that figure. And if we considered inflation, then maybe we might expect a credit growth of 8%. So our credit growth is expected to be around 8% next year. And we see this mainly from petrochemicals and food beverage because of business capital utilization. Mining and the mining sector is driven by the EV battery development that is being prepared. So there are subcontractors that are moving forward and requires business loan. And then logistics, container ships and bulk carrier, they will continue to show significant growth next year. And palm oil and refineries, and this includes biogas, and then telecommunication, especially with the rising digitalization in Indonesia. So we need more data center, we need infrastructure, infrastructure for data, including fiber optics, and healthcare. Healthcare is quite a game changer, especially in terms of medical tourism that is being developed in Bali, because local players can work with global players in developing medical tourism. The medical sector, we have seen a lot of deficits in medical sectors because Indonesians go to Singapore or to Malaysia to get medical treatment. But with the development of medical or healthcare tourism, special medical tourism in Bali and maybe in other regions as well, I think this might be game changing in our healthcare environment. It might draw healthcare tourism in from other countries. But the government might be investing in airport, harbors, highway or tollways. It's not enough that the government cannot provide enough funding for this. So the divestment in these infrastructure businesses will open opportunity for the banks to invest in this infrastructure development. And then consumer credit will also grow as economy continue to improve. Now, the next slide is on post-pandemic changes. We have to embrace the change. We have to accept this change. There are significant changes in this our lifestyle. There are differences, for example, in investment in terms of medical care and pharmaceuticals. There is a change in, for example, with people working from home mostly, there is a rise in property values. So there are changes from focusing on malls and office buildings to residential property. Digital economy is inevitable, and this is accelerated by the pandemic. Digital infrastructure and provision of data package and data center is crucial. Tourism and hospitality industry will also begin to move next year. So because this is something that you cannot experience virtually. You cannot experience tourism and hospitality industry from online, but airlines will transform themselves. Demand for airlines will continue to rise, even though a lot of them went bankrupt in Indonesia. Indonesia will see some changes in this air transportation sector. And energy transition will happen fast, and with the green economy, oil and coal producers will drop, but those gas producers will grow for the next few years, but their contribution to the contribution of oil and coal to the overall energy mix will decrease. Gas, we see this as a transitional source of energy, but the focus will be more on alternative renewable energy sources. And these will require investment from bank and the stock exchange. Now, the pandemic accelerates the adoption of digital channel, and this opens the opportunities for SMEs. So every bank should prepare for SMEs. Banks will compete with fintech. They will compete with e-commerce. This is what's happening now. For example, you can see here e-money transactions increased very rapidly during the pandemic. And this will disrupt small and medium-sized banks. So we need to prepare them. Small and medium-sized banks should adjust and adapt to this. There are significant transactions in online transactions. A new business model, the online or e-commerce is becoming the new online business model. Fintechs will also disrupt small and medium banks. There is a very fierce competition between fintechs and small and medium banks. And the Indonesian credit scene is still dominated by 4 banks because they are still able to provide they're still able to provide services both to SME and e-commerce as well as to big businesses, and they can compete with the fintechs. The other speakers had spoke about optimism in 2022, but we cannot be complacent. We have been able to control the pandemic because this is at the base. This is the basis for optimism and positive outlook. Just to elaborate what you have said earlier, especially your last slide on SME, I think this is part of this is an opportunity for collaboration between marketplace and fintech to develop SME to develop digitalization of SME. So fintech through their applications and existing technology, they can reach out to more market, but the banks might have database and potentials for financing that can be explored so that financing of SMEs can be developed further. Banks are open to this opportunity. Banks with digital technology and which are being modernized now, they are creating API, they are creating connectors with e-commerce, with fintechs, because each of these options have their strengths and weaknesses. E-commerce cannot compete with banks. Fintech can compete with banks in accumulating savings. Fintech cannot compete with banks in accumulating savings. So each have its plus and minuses. While e-commerce control the technology, and fintech is more skilled and more specialized in adapting, and they have better penetration, more widespread penetration. Maybe we can work together with them to provide better service to certain groups like the SMEs. Thank you, Para dan Pak Dede. And then next, we have our next speaker. I would like to listen to Pak Wasudewan from Deputy CEO of 99 Group, Rumah 123. So, Pak Wasudewan, can you share your insight into property market penetration in 2022 as your company focuses or specializes in property business? Thank you, Pak Aditya. Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to say hi to Pak Balil, the Minister Sakti Tranggono, also Pak Arsyad Rashid, Pak Raden Pardede, Pak Edwin Redwan, and Pak Riki Afrianto. We're going to look into the property industry from rumah123.com. I think we agree that property industry is the locomotive of the driving force of our economy. It gives it is direct contribution to the GDP by contributing to 174 other industries. So this is a very crucial industry. In 2021 we think 2021 is a turning point from what we experienced in 2020. We notice an increase in number of visitors to our website. In the first semester of this year, there are 1.7 million more visitors coming to our website. And demographically, these visitors in 44% of our visitors in 2020 are male and 55% are female. And this year, there is a shift, and more female visitors are visiting our sites. Property buying is a very important decision for a family, and mostly it's the female or the mother of the family that look into this decision before they make this decision. And in terms of age groups, in the first semester of this year, we notice that most of the people looking to buy their first house, there is a drop in the there is a drop in the visitors from age 35 to 44. And there is an increase in the number of visitors looking to buy their house from the 45 to 54 age group. There is a big jump in there. And there is a drop in number of visitors in age group 18 to 24 and 25 to 34. So there is a shift. So these younger people are probably deciding to focus more on their job, to make sure that they have a secure job before they decide to invest in a house or acquire a property. But on the other hand, in other segments, the older generations, the older age groups might see this as a momentum to start investing on property. They might be more financially secure, they might be more financially established to make investment during the pandemic. So this is quite an interesting fact. And this is something that we observed this year. if we look back to the past 5 years, 33% of property seeker are those who are looking to buy their first house, and this is dominated by the younger age groups or age demographics. And based on location, we know that most of property seekers are located in the greater Jakarta area because it's easier to access information in this area. But when we compare the first semester of 2021 and 2020 and 2021, we see a high jump in the Eastern Indonesia region. So if you see in the upper regions, the numbers increase very high in Papua Barat, North Maluku, Papua, and Gorontalo. So this is a signal that might highlight what Pak Bahlil said, that with the development of infrastructure in Eastern Indonesia, and 51% of the foreign investors are being made outside of Java, this is being responded by the property seekers. They want to profit from the first mover advantage. So with the infrastructure development and investment in outside of Java, this shows a positive signal that draws property investors outside of Java. I also would like to highlight what the minister said earlier. With the downstreaming of industry, there will be a lot more business centers or industrial centers that will draw people to stay in those areas. So this is important, and this is also expressed in Minister of Fisheries said the fishing quota regions, the fishing quota zones will draw more, will open more job opportunities as fishing boat crews and other loading dock workers, for example, and they will require housing. They will require apartments. So what the government has done in building infrastructure and drawing investment to develop industry outside of Java, this will have a multiplier effect, and this cause a rise in demand for property, as you can see in the green regions on the map. So it's not only a matter of location, but also if there is going to be development in that area. Another speaker had spoken about the change in lifestyle. Pak Raden spoke about the change in lifestyle. Most of us are working from home, so there is a drop in a demand for office space, for example, because a lot of our work can be done from home. So individual houses are still the most in demand for people who are looking to buy their house. So there is a high, more demand for houses. And in the first semester of this year, we haven't seen a significant rise in apartments. It even shows a declining trend, but maybe we'll see this another rise in second semester of this year. But price-wise, it is interesting to observe that because the pandemic is making us more cautious in our investment, because it is important to make sure that we engage in less risky investment. So there is an increase in search of property under 2 billion rupiah. So there is an increase in searches for property under 2 billion rupiah. The highest spike is is for houses under 400 rupiah. So this is an interesting investment, especially for investors with quite a stable source of investment to go and invest in these kinds of properties. And if we look at the houses that are priced over 3 billion rupiah, there is a slight drop. So maybe it is time for us for investors to look at the potentials for houses over 3 billion. Maybe they had to divest their property investment to smaller, cheaper houses, but maybe in good locations outside of Java. Mr. Wasudewan, you have very limited time left. And next we have a change in the prices of second-hand house. So the prices are quite stable, but we want to highlight that house prices in Makassar increased more than in other cities. And next. And what's the outlook for property market in 2022? We see an increase in people who are searching for houses, and individual house is still a prima donna. And we cannot also ignore the fact that people are looking into properties in Eastern Indonesia. The price of second houses is also increasing, even though the prices is still stable. So the government has provided incentives for house ownership with interest rates and abolishment of VAT. So this is the right time to invest in property, and I believe that property will be one of the driving forces in 2022. There is a video at the end of the presentation, so thank you so much. That's it from me. Thank you, Pak Wasudewan. But just one thing that I would like to ask you. You said that next year prospects of investment in property is quite promising. Demographically and geographically, you have shown a picture of how property values vary from these regions. So the current trend is individual house. There used to be a trend for packing to city, but now that we can work from home, most of us can stay wherever we are, even in the outlying regions outside of Jakarta. We can remain productive, we can stay productive. So this trend, how individual houses is enjoying a more dynamic market, whereas apartment and office buildings is going through a slump. Is this going to be a trend going forward, or something that will be greatly influenced by digitalization? That's a very interesting question. We receive a lot of questions like this. The pandemic is a very important point that reminds us that a lot of things that we have done a certain way can be done another way without reducing our productivity. A lot of companies now are working from home, and this is responded to by property developers. They are designing houses where it can be used as an office, so a small office. So developers had seen this an opportunity. So this is something that they might be doing more going forward. There are certain institutions that will require office buildings, but certain offices, certain businesses, for example, technology companies, they might not require you to go to the office, so you can stay at home and work. So this is something that might still go on for the next couple of years, especially with the acceleration of digitalization. I think this is going to be a trend for the next couple of years. Thank you, Pak Wasudewan. Before we go on with the next speaker, as Pak Wasudewan said, we're going to see a presentation from rumah123.com. This is the video.
That is the video from rumah123.com. And we have one more panelist with us. Yes, and from the video, I get the message that now it's time to buy. And now we will go to our fifth panelist, Bapak Ricky Afianto, Global Marketing Director of PT Mayora Group. Now, this is a major player in customer goods. So, Pak Ricky, I would like to know about the investment prospect next year, the opportunities, barriers, and maybe there are opportunities, incentives that you could convey to us during this pandemic. You have 12 minutes. Thank you, Pak Adit, Ibu Lisa, and also ladies and gentlemen, I would like to greet Pak Arsyad, Pak Raden Pardedip, Pak Wasudewan, and Pak Edwin. I would like to share my screen. Is it visible? Okay, good day. Adit, can you see the slide now? Yes, food and beverage industry, challenge and opportunity. For Mayora, as mentioned earlier, that Mayora Group, we have exported more than 100 countries and 50% contribution from the export. And Pak Bahlil remarks earlier, we want to export not only raw material, but to bring the Indonesian brand to the global area. And we are doing just that. Now, you receive various data from our panelists. And here, I would like to inform you about fast-moving consumer goods. Now, after the pandemic started, there is F&G development for 4%. This is the first one after pandemic. And the hypermarket still minus, mini market shows a 5% increase. And for the first time, general trade, we call it, General trade, 47%. And then same with medical channel and beauty channel. Beauty channel is still -7. And if you see for supermarket and cosmetic, they are still experiencing minus. And this is the same situation after COVID. And then if we see what panelists mentioned earlier, they are optimistic, same as I. There are opportunities, but there are also challenges, and we see that we have adapted to the market in the midst of COVID pandemic. And for fast-moving consumer, we face three challenges: purchasing power that will weaken, second, demand creation, where it will be tough during the COVID pandemic, and if we could maintain and reduce the infection rate, the demand will improve. But with the digital transformation, it's like David versus Goliath. Now, here, we have to be cautious as well. Now, the digital transformation, only like 20% that use Industry 4.0. Other countries already 50%, because there are companies that could survive without digital transformation. But if they remain like this in the long run, they would be inefficient. So here, David conquered Goliath. Now, but for next year, we expect that there will be more small companies challenging big companies. Now, big companies, if they are not ready, then small companies will overcome them. And now let's go deeper into purchasing power. I mentioned that it will weaken. Now, from Mayora perspective, we must create innovation. And here, our product must bring value. And for Mayora, last year, since the pandemic until today, we launched 14 new products. And what you see here are the products, some of the products that we launched during COVID. Now, if we wait for the market to be fully recovered, it would be too late for us. So here, as business people, we have to build with optimism, and we have to make the market look attractive by launching new products. Now, this is our way, our approach. Once our product have value, then we believe we could survive. And then second, demand creation. Demand creation, it's not easy to do during pandemic, but it also bring about potential. I mentioned hypermart have minus, but minimart have positive growth. Now here we prioritize to those segments who have positive increase. And then we also focus on insightful communication. For example, this is one of the advertisement that we launched in India during COVID pandemic. And India also suffers enormously during the pandemic. Now, at that time, we have campaign with Amitabh Bachchan as our character. That's advertisement, and the market's sales is increasing. So we are happy with it. So don't wait for the market to be growing. And second, for the Copico, we have this in 100 countries. And during the pandemic, we see that there is a trend to see Korean drama or K-pop. And here we also observe in the US, in Indonesia, they have an increased interest in watching K-pop drama. And here we also approach or advertise in Vincenzo K-pop. Now here it shows that apart from innovation, we also launch communication to create demand of our product, especially during the era in the midst of COVID pandemic. And then we talk about next, the silent killer. Here, the silent killer is how we need to keep on learning. So we must have a mindset like a startup. So don't think that we could easily satisfied. So we have to see and keep learning what are the things that we could improve. And then everyone now is talking about the digital transformation and why is dangerous. And I say it could be a silent killer as well. People are busy with online. They are doing everything online. But for food and beverage player, especially at targeting CD class, the contribution of digitalization is still small, less than 5%. Now, this is dangerous. So e-commerce is important, but for certain category, digitalization is not everything. So you could still get profit from offline. So when we sell beverage, it's difficult through e-commerce because if they're thirsty, they would go directly to the nearest shop near to them. It would take a while if you order online. I'm not saying that online is not important, but we see it as an omni-channel. And then second, it is difficult to build brand in e-commerce. Why? Because e-commerce is based on two options: cheaper price or discount, and second, free delivery. So that are the two things that the consumer remember. So when you want to do e-commerce, you have to beware. So here we must think about creating a balance. We must build brand apart from a cheap price. So next, for those of you who are working online, this is relating with digital and it is dangerous for me in food and beverage industry. So this is an example. So you need to count the F word here in 6 seconds. 1, 2, from here to here, count how many F word. It's like watching for 6 seconds, how many F word? 3, 4, 3 F. So, okay, you need to answer that carefully, silently. But Ibu Lisa, how many F you count? 4. Oh, Ibu Lisa counted 4. Okay, thank you. What is the correct one? Is 6 F word. So usually you miss 1, 2, 3. Oh, yes, the off have F. So you're missing 3 F's. So we're saying the same, but it is difficult to communicate to consumer. Now, this is what happened in digital. So in digital world, what sort of advertisement that you remember? What sort of commercial regarding food and beverage? But if you think hard, okay, I remember Topet, Tokopedia, and then I ask, what are the messages? Usually there are 2 messages, oh, discount or promotion. So usually those are the things. But if it's relating to brand, that's missing. So this is what I mentioned about silent killer. And then why in digital it's difficult for people to remember our message, because it's different from watching TV. Because in mobile phone, you're about to do something, but if you're in front of the TV, you're ready to be entertained. So whatever flash on your TV, you remember that. So there memory span is different. And then for an old people like me, I could just scroll on my smartphone. But if we see on TV, there's prime time from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. But in mobile phone, there is no prime time. It's up to us. And they are active. And then for hyperactive, here, the apps could grow and the user jumping around. So here, with the digitalization, it is harder to reach your customer or consumer. Oh, you still have 1 minute. Okay. So this is the last slide. So here, the digital message is clear that purchasing power will decrease, but if we have positive innovation, we give value to our product, it will create a positive sentiment as well. And we must also learn about the behavior and give a positive mindset. And then the silent killer, be careful. Digitalization is important, but does your category, your product fit with digitalization? So you need to learn continuously. And what is important for me, if we already exist in the market, we must have a startup mindset still. I guess that is all from my side. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Pak Ricky, for a very interesting presentation. So, my regards to Amita Bachchan from Beritawan Media Holding. Okay, so with all the things that you mentioned, the fast-moving consumer goods product is where you're in. For next year, you think it's relatively stable, or you think there is no significant increase? Because the people will need this, and the digital era is not that disruptive. It doesn't disrupt the communication pattern. So what do you think? Well, I think the prospect for next year is quite positive. And if we see the data from Nielsen, there is a positive growth. And here it will last until next year. And then the purchasing power. But on one side, it will increase the sale price from producer to consumer. Now, we have to see how to balance the COVID mitigation steps. If the infection rate is lowered, then the informal sector, which rely on F&B industry, it will increase because we are targeting middle class to lower class, and it will be improved next year. Wonderful. And now I would like to give the mic to Lisa to convey questions from the audience. Yes, now we are entering the Q&A. Luckily, no one asked about the K-pop drama and how the relation with Kopiko candy advertisement. But here, I would like to select several questions from the audience. A question I have for Pak Edwin Ridwan, BPJS workforce. So the question from Hani: to face uncertain situation, what sort of preventive efforts take by BPJS as insurance company to contribute towards the prosperity and the protection of the labor force? So by Edwin Ridwan, the floor is yours to answer this question. Yes, thank you. So here, I would like to answer limited to the investment area. And as we know, with COVID-19, you're right, there is an increased level of uncertainty, and the asset value fluctuates even further. So what we are doing, as I mentioned in several occasions, is that we need to reduce our exposure in the capital market, not selling, but by using carefully the 73 trillion premium we receive every year, but we limit the interaction in the capital market. But I also would like to add that if the condition is improving, like what we are witnessing today, then I believe we could enter the capital market again. So hopefully that answers your question, honey. Yes, thank you, Pa Edwin. And now next question to all panelists from Andi Novian Ragil. His question, what do you think concerning the digital ecosystem in the business prospect for next year? Everyone is talking about the digital platform. So we will start with Pak Raden Pardede from BCA. Yes, thank you for the question. Well, for BCA, for us, digitalization or the digital ecosystem, it's a must for us in the banking sector. And if we go into the digital sector, everything will be more efficient. So the distance between supplier and producer to supplier and vice versa will be minimized, and it will be more efficient than before using the digital ecosystem. So for example, producer would be, they would know the need, the desire of consumer quicker. If they don't use the digital, they would take a longer time. So here, the producer could adjust so that they could understand and know better what the consumer need. So the digital platform enables this. And from the financial side, it will shorten the distance as well. It will help with the logistic, with the raw material, and to meet with the consumer. All of that could be done in one digital platform. Yes, thank you. And now, I go to Pak Wasudewan. Yes, thank you. Well, here, I will be one of the panelists that focusing its business in digital platform. So this question is interesting. For me, digital is one aspect that we cannot live without. So in terms of property context, we see that Rumah 123 could convey information that is comprehensive. The journey starts with the digital platform. Ready or not, consumer will move into the digital platform. They will do their own research, and then they will conduct purchasing, maybe offline or online for certain commodity. But the process of searching, researching could be done digitally. And then another important point, there are several benefits we get from digital that cannot be obtained offline. We could be an important partner for developer, for the banking sector in Indonesia and other industries, when we could give insight regarding our consumer. And when consumer come to us, like we have 19 million, we need to know their references, what sort of type of housing, the price range, everything. Now, this is important for us. So they give us insight. And then second, reach. Reach is important, outreach. So here, the penetration of digitalization is 18%. And then measurable. Now, the only platform that could give values or measure from a certain segment or group with clear indicator is the digital platform, can be measured clearly. So If we want to have a comprehensive report, we could obtain that easily using the digital platform. So I think it's important. And the Google research mentioned that the digital economy will grow more than $1 trillion. Now, this is interesting and equal to PDB Indonesia this year. So thank you, Pak Wasudewan. And now I move to Pak Ricky to answer this question. I'll be quick. I agree that the digital ecosystem will be useful, especially for SME. Now, if we have one basis, one platform for SME all across Indonesia, both for Indonesian market and global market, it would be wonderful. In the past, it's not possible to do this, but now it is truly possible. And then for distribution, if we want to go to overseas market, we must have a partner, have a long distribution line. And with the e-commerce system, then it is very possible to penetrate overseas market. So once the digital economy is ready, up and running, then there will be a lot of positive inputs from e-commerce. Wow, thank you. That's one of the benefits of digitalization. And now, Pa Edwin Ridwan, your answer, please. Yes, thank you. Well, the way we see digitalization, it has to be relevant with employment rate. So actually it covers two things: digitalization from the existing business model. For example, travel agent, they have offline and they have online services. Now, this is the digitalization of the existing business model. Now, they could reduce their workforce by doing this. Previously, you need a lot of people to do manual work and booking reservations. But now with digitalization, you only need a fraction, only a handful of people. And then here, the job employment could be reduced. And then with this type of model, from the quantity of workforce could reduce, but the quality of services could increase. You need workforce that have high level of skill, specific skills. And then, second point, digitalization is good for new business model. For example, for Gojek. Now, Gojek is a business model that in the past did not exist, but they could emerge due to digital platform. Now, there are business models that could emerge from the digital platform, and Gojek is one example. And we also see that digitalization could create jobs or could close, could terminate jobs, as mentioned by Pak Ricky. The silent killer. Now, digital platform could become the silent killer if we are not careful. So it could make people lose their jobs and other threats. I guess that is all from my side. Thank you, Pak Edwin. So those are the two questions from our audience. All right. Before we end this session, allow me to summarize what the speakers mentioned earlier in this session. Now, regarding the investment prospect next year, we have to remain optimistic next year. And here, our panelists represent many different sectors. And it's very interesting to have their insights. From BP Jam Sostek, you mentioned about a positive sentiment regarding the portfolio development, where we have to be careful. We want to have optimum return and also to provide adequate protection for the labor force. And then from the property segment, Pak Wasudewan, this is time to buy property. Now with the demographic and geographic situation, this is a clear message how property sector, the investment in property will increase next year with new faces. And here, rumah123.com expect to have more consumer. And then Pak Riki Afrianto from Mayora Group, the fast-moving consumer good is a never-ending segment. So it will last because consumer always need food and beverage and fast-moving goods provided by Mayora. And this could be one of the positive aspects that enable us to take off quicker. That is all. And before we end our session, I ask all of the panelists to convey 2-minute closing remarks. I will start with Pa Edwin Ridwan first. Thank you. We from BP Jam Sostek, we want to have the highest return of our investment and to assist and better protect the workforce, our clients. And we are optimistic that next year would be better. And I'm sure that our optimism with hard work would give good yield. That is all from my side. Thank you, Pak Edwin. And now, Pak Wasudewan. Yeah, thank you. From my side, I would like to convey 2 points. First, that property industry is still growing and it has to develop because there are other industry that rely on property sector. And then in every crisis, there always opportunity arise. And COVID pandemic pose a momentum as well, where investors see property as one of their good segment, the positive segment. And then in the past few years, we see that there has been many incentives provided by the government. So again, this is time to buy. And this could assist hundreds of other industries. So those are our message to our investors and our audience. Yes, and now Pak Riki, your closing statement. Yes, thank you, Pak Adit. For us, this pandemic is new, not only for Indonesia, but global world. And there are things that we cannot predict. But for next year, we need to anticipate. So that's the key word. We need to see everything in a positive perspective with high enthusiasm and optimism. And we need to anticipate everything so that even though the negative or positive, for example, if there is an increase of price, now this would be a challenge for us in F&B industry. But if we could anticipate this, we could make plans. We could maintain the demand and even have a more significant growth through export that we are doing to various countries. Thank you. Yes, thank you, gentlemen. For the closing statements and presentation from all panelists. This is definitely beneficial to all of us in entering year 2022. And now I would like to give the mic to Eliza to close our session. Thank you, Pak Aditya. As the head of news in BeritaSatu Media Holding, I would like to convey my utmost gratitude and appreciation to Pak Bahlil Lahadalia, the Minister of Investment, Bapak Sakti Wahyu Trenggono, Minister of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. And also, I'm grateful to our speakers, Bapak Arsyad Rashid from Indonesia Chamber of Commerce, Pak Raden Pardede, Commissioner of BCA, Bapak Riki Avianto, Global Marketing Director Mayora Group, Bapak Wasudewan, Deputy CEO 99 Group, rumah123.com, and Bapak Edwin Ridwan, the Investment Development Director of BPJS, Tenaga Kerja. Thank you for your participation, and we will see you in the next session this afternoon. And with the end of our session, the first session will stop here, but we will continue shortly with our second session. And we are also grateful to Ajaib, our sponsors, and the City of Malang, Mayora Group, BCA, rumah123.com, and PT Telkom, BPJS Jamsostek, and Universitas Mercu Buana. Thank you to all of our sponsors for supporting our discussion. And for the participants, again, please remain with us, because before we enter the second session, we will have a door prize, and the winner will receive a handful of gifts. And second session, we will have the theme to accelerate industrial development in year 2022 with keynote speech from Bapak Agus Gumiwang Kartasasmita, Minister of Industry, with speakers Bapak Tumiyana from PT Widodo Makmur Perkasa, Bapak Tirta Jaya Hambali, Dina Plus, and also representative managing director from the PT Timahud, from the lead industry. All right, so we have to close. I'm Eliza, signing off. See you in the second session, Indonesia Economic Outlook 2022.